Florence was a great time, with achievements in sculpture, literature, painting, music, and more. But this was also a time filled with warfare. During the Renaissance, Italy was divided into many smaller city-states. The wealthiest among these were Florence, Milan, Venice, Naples, and Rome. These city-states were constantly at war with each other and invaders outside. Niccolo Machiavelli is one of the most popular Italian politicians, but not normally in a good way. We don't know a lot about Machiavelli's childhood. His father was a lawyer, so Machiavelli got a formal education growing up. His very first job was secretary for the city. Although Florence was supposed to be a republic during the time of Machiavelli's youth, Florence was effectively controlled by the powerful Medici family, mainly controlled by Lorenzo de' Medici, called the Magnificent. Soon after this, the Medici family, who had ruled for over 60 years, was expelled. This resulted in Machiavelli getting promoted from a secretary to the head of the Second Chancery. For decades, Florence experienced political instability. Machiavelli's life took a major downward spiral in 1512, when he was accused of conspiracy, imprisoned, tortured, and temporarily exiled. It was a failed attempt to regain a political position and the good favor with Lorenzo de' Medici that Machiavelli wrote The Prince, also known as Il Principe, which is the main reason why we are talking about him today. This book is essentially a guide for princes, politicians, and leaders about how to obtain and maintain power. It was a controversial book then, and it's a controversial book now. The final sections of The Prince talk about a specific historical problem, the disunity of the city-states in Italy. Machiavelli writes down his explanation of the failure of the past Italian rulers and concludes by begging future rulers not to make the same mistake, and that Lorenzo de' Medici can bring prosperity and peace back to Italy. The road to success and power for Italy and in politics is not always clean, which is what most of the rulers got wrong, and let morals and principles get in the way of the safety and prosperity of the state. Now that Machiavelli was not able to do the one thing that gave his life meaning, politics, he focused himself on writing. The Prince was first published in 1532, with the permission of Clement VII. In 1559, all of Machiavelli's works were put on a list of books banned by the Catholic Church, called the Index of Prohibited Books. This did not give the effect the Church was hoping for, and soon enough, The Prince was translated into all major European languages and being read all over Europe. So, why was Machiavelli and The Prince so important? Whether they agree with what Machiavelli is saying or not, people are intrigued with this book. He offers an opinion that really hasn't been discussed in history before. He gives us another perspective, and it really makes us wonder the rights and wrongs that have been laid out for us since the first day we were born. Who's to say whether what Machiavelli is saying is morally correct or whether it is just morally incorrect and should never be talked about again? People have been so controversial over this book because I believe that deep down inside of us, we know that, in a way, he's right. Maybe we shouldn't be cruel and vicious always, and maybe sometimes we should choose love over fear, but the world we live in is so far away from the world that we think we live in that we don't know the truth anymore. How are we supposed to know what is right and what is wrong? It's not as simple as black and white. Angels and devils aren't as easily displayed in this world, and we don't know who or what to believe. Francis Bacon, British statesman and philosopher, wrote, "We are much beholden to Machiavelli and others, that write what men do, and not what they ought to do." That quote hung on to me, and it really made me think. He was not afraid to put his ideas into action and show them to everyone around him. The Prince impacted ideas about politics from the Renaissance to now, and it is as relevant and important as it is today than it was in 1513. The end.